Today we're going to be focusing on, can we sustain some kind of reversal with not the strongest base, but a base actually there. And we're going to point out those signals and show you something that looks eerily similar to this, and something we should be very aware of tomorrow is what we can point out in the beginning of this video when we get into the SPY, and maybe that means we need to go check over on Nvidia. So today we're going to be getting into a bunch of technical analysis. We will be looking through a bunch of charts that we go through on this channel, and once again, as it is only 5 days into the month, it might be good to have these monthly expected moves and even monthly expected moves for every stock that we do cover and more over on Patreon. So if you want that, you can get that right now for just $7, and that way you can get those monthly expected moves, which will really help you out in figuring out, hey, what is the risk to reward in these areas? So let's just get into it. So the first thing we need to point out here is the fact that the 2-hour was able to confirm, and this does have a reversal signal underneath it. So this means that right now we could attempt to already solidify that base and really see some upward movement from stocks. But we'll notice we do have a daily range that's saying that we might be a little bit more work ahead of us. 590.38 to the upside, you got 575.74 to the downside. Just notice today, remember today we had a big range for today, and something lackluster happened. Now we saw that a lot in 2024, and that's actually the best case scenario really for Wall Street during those days where you have huge implied volatility. Well, yeah, you got one little upward move right here to go back up to the 5, but we've seen that countless times throughout this run. So what is this reminding me of right now? And this is where we're going to talk about the risk of maybe going down for that next dip. We're going to talk about a couple bearish things we have to be aware of here, and that is the fact that this looks really close to Nvidia. If we go into this 30-minute chart, you're going to see an upward move and confirmation of potential higher low with the 30-minute. That way it can get to the 5, but we're noticing it's pretty lackluster at this point, and so we could experience another drop if that 30-minute cross. And this is where I wanted to point out Nvidia. And you remember Nvidia back in this moment here, we saw that nice move up, we saw the higher low, and then we actually dropped off again because we rejected off of that 5. And that is something we should highly be aware of for stocks at this moment, because you notice right after that, people got very bearish on Nvidia, but all you did was actually set up the potential divergence point for the 2-hour chart. In these areas, you'll notice that in this area, we actually were able to form that 2-hour divergence. And look what came after that moment for Nvidia. Very nice thing. So is the SPY about to do something similar where this 30-minute curls down and you actually see some kind of wonky 30-minute divergence, but also a 2-hour divergence at the same time? I would be highly aware of that right now, but we have not seen that confirmation down, as in this has not fully rejected from that 5-day moving average just yet. But something I would be very open to is this is really close to the center line, so if that curls down, it does hint at negativity can come, and that's where we'd pay attention to our bottom line at 575.74. Now the 2-hour chart, if we're going to see this be some kind of corrective move, you would have liked it to extend for just a little bit. Even Nvidia was able to extend it for a few more hours to create that little signal, so you would hope to kind of fool around in here for another couple hour bars, and then you actually see that start to drop down and you see that quick divergence form. This is something that I would really be looking for, but like I said, we already have those divergences on the RSI, so this may attempt to see bullishness out the gate, and we'll see if some good news comes overnight. It seems like this market right now doesn't really want to drop further at this exact moment. Okay, if that 30-minute crosses, that could change, but right now it's suggesting, hey, a 2-hour bounce is coming, and we just want to make sure that that 2-hour bounce is reaching key levels like 597, and then seeing some maybe pullbacks to get good structure to head to the upside. So that's what I'd mainly be watching for the SPY. But to me, with these signals as they stand right now, they are pointing in the upward direction, but that's why I wanted just to keep in mind how Nvidia looked when it made a shape like this, and all we have to do is see if the 30-minute rejects off of this by crossing down that MACD, and it's very likely that we're going to go make some kind of 2-hour little signal down in these areas for the SPY. The Qs as well, we can see very similar to that overall move from Nvidia back in the day, right? We can still pay attention to the same things. This is by no means far away from the center line, meaning we're leaning towards pullback. This could be some kind of drop to go to lower levels. Now, we do have daily expected moves. Those are suggesting that that's not the best possibility right now. So 508.93 to the upside and 595.08 to the downside. So you notice that the daily expected moves have shifted up here, and that's a big deal as you're confirming 2-hour charts to the upside. Now, this is a reason why we might just see that base right now and try to make a big move to something like 518. That would be fantastic. Then we actually pull down and gain some more buyers to retest those key levels, right? We notice the breakdown area, if we could take that back. And I think there is a chance we could stop here and still remain pretty good with that daily expected move. But I'd like to see a bigger move to really convince us like, hey, this is a bottom at this point. Because if we just see this lackluster move to here and the 2-hour crosses down, you could be at lower prices again for the Qs, because they might build up to that center line and then experience another drop. And right as people get bearish, you know, we're still looking for those reversal signals at any time. But this is very interesting. We're at a 200-day moving average right now for the Qs on the daily scale. So this is a big time to be watching. We're just aware that this, you know, looking at Nvidia at the beginning of this video was important to me because it does show you how Nvidia had this type of structure and then failed. So it is still important to pay attention if these are failing. So for tomorrow, as the indicators stand at this moment, that would be something I would react to, right? If that does happen, I would have to react with my trades. But we can notice that right now it's pointing in that upward direction, and we confirmed a 2-hour chart. So since we confirmed a 2-hour chart, we could see that extended move, and we just want to be aware if this MACD actually crosses back down into negative territory to see this low tested even go a little bit lower. So something I would rather see is this to just actually catch that bid, really get that 2-hour to bounce up, try to go positive right away, and then maybe we see some kind of consolidative move to actually head to the upside for the Qs. You have seen this cross down on the daily, but once again, the daily is still positive for this MACD for Apple. So we were aware that this could happen, and we're looking for that really clean break. And have we seen that clean break? Well, we've gotten a break, but look at the wicks coming in. Look at the buying pressure coming in right around our 236.36 level, which is just fantastic. So we're still looking for that daily to confirm back up. Do we have signals that suggest that this 2-hour is some kind of big basing out signal? Not necessarily. You really don't. So this might depend on the state of the market to build back. If it really wants to see without any divergence more a higher low, well then reacting up to something like 242 and then seeing that pull down would be a nice way to go higher for Apple. So I will be paying attention to this, but right now if that 2-hour just catches some kind of move like this and it fails, we don't actually get up towards these levels fully. Yeah, you can curl up this MACD, but it can curl right back down into negative territory. So we're just aware of those things, but there's some serious buying pressure coming in to some of these big stocks, and that's something we should be aware of. The 30-minute chart, you have no real signals here that suggest a big bounce is going to come for Apple. Right here, you had the suggestion of a nice bounce to retest the 5 with that 30-minute divergence on the MACD, not necessarily on the RSI at the same time. So this is where you really wanted it to hold up here and see that positivity continue. Instead, you just react and actually reject off of the 5-day moving average again. And you go down to deeper prices and you wipe out all those divergences. You can see that from the MACD and the RSI. You've wiped out all the divergences and even the divergences that weren't there in the past. So if you really wanted to, you wanted to hold a divergence point with this level here, with this low, but that didn't take place. So now we have the opportunity where Apple could be seeing this great move and it could just drop down one more time to see if it can make people nice and bearish before the weekend. So this is something I will be paying attention to for Apple because I'm looking for that 2-hour to cross up, and that could still have a complex corrective move in it as well, right? That could see another wave down. Even if it curls up, that could just be some kind of bounce that then sellers grab a hold of later on. So at this moment, the 30-minute is curled up, but it's in negative territory, and Apple looks like it's on the struggle bus. So you're going to need a lot of positivity from the 2-hour to head higher. If the 30-minute just crosses back down though, it's most likely going to test these lows, if not go make a new one, and then we'd be looking out for divergence. Tesla, this is actually really good. You're riding on that trend line right now. So very interesting for sure, but attempting to go positive here. Can it curl up? And that's where you really want to look at this 2-hour chart and just be like, am I seeing the positivity? Because this is so significant. of a divergence, it really can cause some big pops. This thing could end up popping all the way up to 357 by next week. Like, this thing could go nuts here for Tesla soon. So it will be very interesting to see. But Tesla is one of the ones that's showing the divergence. So it's kind of saying, yeah, Apple's not showing you anything, but Tesla is. And Tesla is showing you things at key levels according to weekly and monthly expected moves. We can really watch Tesla and say, hey, this looks like some kind of upward move would make sense. And at the end of the day, this daily's been selling off forever. You even see the divergence slightly holding on the daily scale on the RSI. So it seems that we're going to get a reaction here. But just so we're aware for Tesla, even if that does get a big daily move up to that 357.78, if that confirms back down on the daily MACD, that would suggest lower prices than this low right here, and you're most likely going to fill that gap and test 250 down at lower levels. So, you know, we've been talking about that 250 level for a little while, and if we catch a bounce here and that bounce actually fails, we might actually end up there. So, you know, originally talking about this area, but if we keep dropping down like this, you just keep opening the door to that 250, and if this is going to be really confusing for people over time before we're able to see the next bullish run, we could see something like this set up for Tesla on the daily. But the main thing is, what are we looking into right now? Right now, Tesla has the opportunity to potentially curl up this daily chart because you have confirmed 2-hour divergence, and you're looking for the moment where we strongly take back that 5-day moving average and hopefully get up to somewhere like, you know, 325 or something like that. These levels, 326, would be very, very nice for Tesla. If we can see some kind of boom, get a little pullback, you might end up to these levels, and then you might get a bigger pullback and actually turn that to the upside. So this is what I'm watching, but as of right now, it just looks like, hey, there's an attempted reversal signal on both your MACD and RSI at the same time for Tesla. And it's very significant on the RSI. So I'd be paying very close attention if that takes back the 5, because that is suggesting that you can get a daily bounce from the 200 here for Tesla. Now I'm going to talk about Amazon, and I'm going to tell you right now, Amazon looks like one of the most clear signals to turn up the daily chart. But remember that a lower high is still the most probable thing for Amazon at this point. Now, this is a very, very good signal. It's in a buy zone. It's down at lower levels, right? We see it very clearly on the MACD and RSI. So this has a lot of potential to be one of the easiest setups ever. Now, this doesn't mean there's not risk. You're still at that 5-day moving average. So as this is curled up, we want to see if the 30-minute gives a little shakeout for the time being. Look at the 30-minute, looking a little curvy, looking a little bit controlled with the buying. So if we wanted to, wouldn't we get up to these resistances? We'd get up to these levels, dip down to find those buyers again, and then curl back up. So we're really looking for, does this 30-minute even cross, right? If the 2-hour momentum takes over, daily momentum takes over after that, this thing can get going. But for the time being, if that 30-minute does roll down, we've seen these tons of times with all these stocks where they just go up to the 5, roll down, go up to the 5, roll down. Even over here, move sideways to the 5, go down. So we need to be aware if this 30-minute crosses, we might be right in saying that this thing goes up eventually, but that's the word, eventually. It might need to curl down to really solidify this as a base, get people nice and bearish for the next drop, and then it actually curls back to the upside. So really just paying attention if that crosses down, great reversal signal. So everything is pointing in that direction. I'm more talking about just if some kind of reaction is necessary tomorrow, because everything from the charts right now, at least from the 2-hour chart, is suggesting that Amazon should curl up a daily chart soon, and that's very, very interesting to me. So this just goes to show we have 2-hour divergence and a daily chart can curl up, and if I see that around a weekly or monthly expected move, hey man, Amazon's looking really clear, and Amazon is saying even if I do get some kind of 30-minute drop, I'm very likely to be able to hold up and then end up in the upward direction, maybe going on into next week. We're going to go into Nvidia just for a brief moment here because Nvidia has the triple divergence on your RSI. The coolest part about this triple divergence is it's holding every single point really freaking well. And now you're seeing it build up to these levels, but we've seen moments like this before, right? It's just a little bit smaller. I mean, we've seen it over here. This is a bigger one. We've seen it over here. This one's a nice one, but every single time they end up failing. So what should we definitely be needing to pay attention to? I know we have triple divergence on the RSI here. Is that the best signal in the world? No, it's like half. It's like half of a good signal, which is great. It still means, hey, I could potentially take a trade with that, but it is suggesting I need to pay very close attention if I need to manage my risk, if I need to manage my trade, which is something we talk about in the course. So if this curls down on the 30-minute, you're easily saying, hey, this 2-hour cannot head up if the 30-minute is rejecting off the 5 and heading down, and maybe we're going to make some kind of divergence before this actually heads to the upside, even on the 2-hour chart. So there are some things that can elongate this overall corrective move, but overall this is just how bases are built, and we've seen complex bases before, so we should be open to that over here. And you've already seen the makings of a complex base for Nvidia, but ultimately this is not breaking down dramatically, and that's a big deal because we do not want these divergences on the daily scale for Nvidia to get violated. So all we're looking for here is, can we see this? Can we break through? Then maybe get the retest to head up, and you do have some 2-hour signals that are pointing towards that. You do see that on the RSI, not the MACD at the same time. So this is a time where we have to be aware this can reverse around now, but it also can see another 2-hour drop, right? We can see a little divergence like this one before we actually get that big positivity. So that is something I will be looking for from Nvidia over the next few sessions. Even if I want to take the play now, that's perfectly fine, as long as I'm aware if that 30-minute crosses down, it's right by that center line, and we could curl back down into something like 106 before we actually catch that bounce to make that quick divergence for Nvidia. All right, now I'm going to show you guys another great one, and Amazon was a good one. I mean, I think Nvidia is a decent one. It's an okay one for the 30-minute, but Meta is a great one for this 2-hour here. Very, very nice for Meta to give us almost the triple dip at this point and make divergence. So you see divergence on your MACD and RSI at the same time. Both are extremely significant. Now, why would we be wanting to pay attention to that right now? Well, because Meta, remember the plan with Meta from this daily chart was this is going to be a pullback and we're potentially going to make new all-time highs when it's done, right? That's what we were talking about in here. Leaked higher, gave us the 2-hour divergence, and bam, to the downside. Thank you to monthly expected moves for the Meta trade, right? But this is great because if the daily is going to curl up, we should see 2-hour divergence. And so we see 2-hour divergence, which makes it very obvious to us. And the daily is where? By that center line. So if this curls up, wouldn't that mean positivity? So is Meta about to make new all-time highs soon? That's the question. And then is Meta going to give us that hint? If it gets really excited, is it going to give us that hint that says, hey, you have daily divergence, and if that confirms, we need to be paying attention to downside. But for now, where are we? We're right here, and that has 2-hour divergence, which suggests that the 2-hour chart is going to take this thing up enough to curl up the daily chart, and that's a big deal. So going into the 30-minute time frame, the thing that we need to be aware of is the buying pressure here, not the best, okay? Still not the best. Glad it's more in the upward direction, but you're just running into the 5 again. So if we wanted to get down to our 617.82 level, well, the 30-minute might see a mean drop here, get people really, really bearish on the stock, and then all you see on your MACD and RSI at the same time is a little divergence just like that. And so that's what I'd be paying attention to as far as risk, right? This is just simple management of the trade type of behavior here, which is I have a 2-hour signal. If I take the 2-hour signal on the good confirmation at something like 657, maybe even at the end of the bar, well, then I'd be looking for, hey, let's make sure in case I get screwed, I'm paying attention to if I need to get out, right? That's the plan. The plan for this trade would be if the 30-minute does cross down, I do not want to be in calls anymore. I want to see if that's able to base out in some way and turn back up, base out and turn up in some way to not be part of the next trap, but definitely be part of the next upward move. And none of that's happened yet, right? So this still could produce just upside at the end of it all. And that's what I want to be paying attention to right now, is the fact that right now it's saying upside, but this is when I know that my plan in order to manage my risk will be there, and I don't want to be in calls if this 30-minute MACD is curling down and rejecting off of the 5-day moving average. But at the end of the day, you have great 2-hour divergence. You're potentially at very, very close. I think you are very, very close, if not already there, for a base for Meta. So that is a big deal, and that can curl up daily charts. So if Meta is going to see a good base and turn up for some reason, wouldn't we assume that the SPY and the Qs might turn up for some reason? And that would be very interesting. If these things fail though, the environment that you're in, selling begets selling in this type of market right now. So if you see something roll down, make sure to treat it seriously and have that plan to execute your trade, but also manage it if something goes wrong. Microsoft not making the best signals, not on the MACD and RSI at the same time, but once again, another stock showing another signal and able to actually get above these key levels, which is great. You really want to see that reaction up to about 405, then you can start to pull back, or even better, gap above that and use it as support, right? Gap above that, get to these type of levels, then retest it, right? Because if we see that extended move, say up to something like this, right? 417, 418, and then we curl down and curl up, what do you have? You have potential for some good structure to head to the upside for Microsoft. Now let's look at the daily chart, because we do have 2-hour divergence, and we understand like, hey, if that 2 hour drops down, this is completely failing. But for the time being, this daily, if that thing can cross up, I think it's pretty set that, yeah, you might fool around in these areas, but it looks like we're going to make an attempted move here. And it's important to note here as well, even if I am taking a bullish trade, because this looks like some kind of base for Microsoft, one, I have to pay attention to if that trade goes wrong. Everything that we talked about on the last chart, right? Looking at those 30 minutes, having your plan for getting in and getting out and where to take profit, right? Having a plan for the whole way, and having a plan not only if it goes right, meaning take profit, but also a plan for if it is starting to go wrong. And that will really help you out. It's paying attention to your risk. It's understanding and respecting the amount of money you have and the amount of money you're risking, and understanding that losing 20% is way better than losing 100%, especially in these kinds of markets where a trade setup could potentially set up within 24 hours after a potential management of the trade. So something here though, just the last note for Microsoft is you're very deep into negative territory. So a lower high, if we see some kind of booming type move, a lower high is very, very likely for Microsoft going forward. And that holds true for Google as well. A lower high is very likely, and I'd really be watching this little area in here towards that gap resistance. That's going to be some serious resistance. So something you're going to want to do here is really pile up to break through that. That's going to be the bullish way to head higher. But as the MACD stands now, if you see some kind of curl up like this, and then it just rolls back down, well, guess what? You just made a lower high, and that's a big problem, because that means we could, you can always base out and see that 2 hour curl back up, right? It's kind of like paying attention to the management of risk if I take a downward play. But if this does curl down on the daily scale, it's really leaning towards test the lows, if not go make a new one for Google. But we're not talking about that right now, right? That's just something to be aware of in the future. Right now, we're talking about this, and why could this curl up, right? Why could this curl up and maybe get to 182.50? Well, that's because of the 2 hour chart. Now, the 2 hour chart here doesn't look as good as some other ones. It doesn't look like Amazon. It doesn't look like Meta. But once again, another stock that, just keep in mind, Meta and Amazon, they are showing those signals right now. So they are suggesting that we could see a bottom right now. And you do see these signals on other charts on the RSI, but not on the MACD at the same time. I believe someone asked me during the live show what I would rather see. Would I rather see the divergence on the MACD or the RSI? And my actual thinking with this is I would rather potentially see it on the RSI, and then go from there and really look for some other things, right? Maybe pull up volume, maybe pull up some other things, just to give myself another hint somewhere if it's not on the MACD at the same time. But I think RSI divergences are perfectly fine as long as they're enough extended that you can make sense of them and you can really look at the price action, understand what is happening with them. You can see those good moves from just having it on the RSI. But once again, if it's only on one indicator, that would tell me I potentially don't have as many reasons to take the trade as I want to risk big money. It could mean that the 2 hour could curl down at any moment. So I might want to even be watching this 30-minute now and say, hey, even if that crosses down, I might want to be weary about that, because we actually see that divergence in the opposite direction for Google on the 30-minute RSI, which means this could produce a 2 hour curl down, which actually would create the divergence on the MACD and RSI at the same time if you're able to hold up at lower levels. So these are just things to be aware of, but I do think it's interesting. It kind of tells me overall that we could be basing out now, but we still have the opportunity to make this more complex as a base on the 2-hour chart going forward. So we're going to need to see some good positivity to convince me like, hey, this thing's not going to continue to make a more complex base at this point for a lot of stocks, and one of those stocks happens to be Google. Everyone and their mom kind of giving up on AMC when I'm actually seeing some of the craziest and good signals that I've seen in a while, right? Now, well, this is another chart that has it on the RSI slightly up and not on the MACD at the same time, so it's not the best signal in the world, but I'll tell you what signal is looking good, and that's the daily. The daily divergence here is looking fantastic, and do you know what you saw before AMC went to hundreds of dollars? You saw daily divergence, and so we have that daily divergence right now. Can the daily produce that positivity maybe over the next couple of sessions, and then you see something crazy next week? Hey, that'd be fantastic, as long as you understand as a trader, this is a real company, this is a real stock, there is real momentum going on within it. I know they're doing fishy stuff, but even if you see that fishy stuff going on, momentum will still tell you when this thing is going to pop off. And right now you have a daily divergence, which is exactly what you had back in the day when it went to hundreds of dollars. So it is a time to be paying attention, and you even have one signal that says you might want to pay attention right now, and that's your RSI. The MACD, if we still need to make this more complex, right, we could see that upward move on the 2-hour, get the Steven curl up, and then curl back down and really show like, hey, negativity again, sell this thing, do not buy this thing, and then it ends up turning up. And you actually see it at the same time. That's when I like it a little bit better, but it is once again, another stock, another size. So it's not just these big high cap stock. No, it's actually these stocks too, like AMC, is showing that reversal signal on the RSI, but not the MACD at the same time. And I just think that's so interesting. And it kind of means to me, if we do get some good news, these stocks are ready to see a pop. But are we going to get that good news now, or are we going to see another drop and then maybe get some good news on Friday? That's what we have to go over. So GME as well. Very, very nice for GME, because what is GME showing? It is showing 2-hour divergence again on the RSI, on the MACD at the same time, and it's holding the previous divergence points on the MACD, and it's holding almost all of the previous divergence points on this RSI. So very interesting for GME. This means that as this goes positive, you start to add up probabilities that this could gain some big buys behind it. It means momentum to the upside is starting to pick up, while the momentum to the downside is starting to die off. And the big thing about this is, now that you have 2-hour divergence, you're like, hey, I'm looking for a daily to cross up, and you go to a daily scale and you go, oh my goodness, there's daily divergence here as well. So you have daily divergence on both AMC and GME going into the end of this week. Things can get pretty interesting next week for GME, and I wouldn't be sleeping on it. Now, the last time we saw signals like this were down in these areas, and we noticed that over time, GME started to make that upward move. So we know it doesn't have to be complete smooth sailing when we confirm those divergences, but eventually, once you actually do see that confirm and go positive, that's a big deal. So I'd be looking for this daily to go positive, and that would be a fantastic thing for GME and AMC. What can we read into with volatility? Well, we know one thing from the daily scale. If this curls down, most likely the SPY is curling up on the daily scale, and that's kind of what we need to understand, and we'll go look at the positioning of the MACD when that does happen, so we're aware of it. As of right now, you don't see big reversal signals for volatility, and you're probably thinking these last few days have been absolutely crazy. Not as crazy as this moment. The RSI is not even really getting overbought. So yeah, it's crazy, but is it really that crazy? Now, the 2-hour is the main thing I want to be watching here. If we get a 2-hour move up, some kind of big 2-hour move up, we still talked about how we might need to make that divergence on the MACD and RSI at the same time for the SPY. So if we're going to make that, the VIX is suggesting that that is the most probable thing, because it is way up here and it just violated divergence. So that tells us that we could see a bigger pullback here and end up curling that thing right back up. So just be aware, if this MACD is by the center line, ends up curling up, maybe we even get 30-minute divergence, but I don't think that's the most plausible thing to look for tomorrow, but we'll see if it pops up. For volatility for the morning, though, we notice that once again, remember the SPY with that 5-day coming down had that look almost like Nvidia, where it saw that upward move, made the higher low, then curled back up. Well, we see almost the opposite from volatility. And so if this 30-minute curls up, it most likely means the SPY is curling down, and we could see lower prices for the time being. So this is something I would keep on my radar. If that 30-minute is crossed up, we can see volatility kick in. It doesn't mean immediate selling all the time, right? A lot of the time, volatility, it goes in two ways all the time. It says, hey, this is plus or minus. It's just telling you that you're in a more volatile time where you can see bigger swings. So if you start to see volatility pick up and you see the 30-minute MACD for the SPY curl down, then you are very obviously rejecting from that 5-day, and that's where you would pay attention to the purple line, the red line, and the yellow line right here on your chart, right? That's why we give out these levels. So now we're kind of aware of what's going on. It really looks like we are attempting to make a base right now, but it could continue to be more complex, and this is great practice for bear market behavior, because this is how a bear market behaves. And so if you're not liking this and volatility continues to come in throughout the year of 2025, which is really what we're leaning towards on this channel, you need to make sure to get a good grasp on these monthly and weekly expected moves and how to trade around them. It will really help you out. It'll help out many, many strategies to understand this is a calculation using the options data, and this is all that was priced in for this week, and we've remained down there for quite some time. So if we get some good news, it's ready for a big reaction. And for the rest of the week, you only have this reward for downside, but you have this for risk. So still opening a short position here if you're a day trader, maybe. But if I'm looking for a longer play that I want to hold for a couple of weeks, I don't think this would be the time necessarily right now as far as the weekly expected moves go and the monthly expected moves for that, for that matter of fact. All right, guys, so today it pretty much is this going to be a base tomorrow, or are we going to make it more complex? And that's overall what we're going to be watching. So that means we're going to get some more rip around behavior. We have a little bit less implied volatility, which means we might actually see a move tomorrow, not just this trickle up kind of buying behavior up to the 5. Maybe we'll actually see some bigger moves in the overall market where we might start out to the downside and end up to the upside. I don't know. Anything could happen in this market, but we want to be paying attention to when this thing resolves itself. Do we actually curl up daily charts? And that will be the big deal for us. And if we're watching this, we're trading like water, and we're thinking about our risk before we take any big plays, we'll be just fine. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing. You guys are always fantastic about that. I will be live tomorrow morning for the full amount of time. Our power is back to good. Everything's working good. Internet's working good after the storm. So we will be ready to go live tomorrow morning with you guys. So bring over some stocks. Let's look at some stuff together, and let's try to make money in this market. All right. As long as we're paying attention to risk and trading like water, hey, we should be able to make money all in any kind of market. Thank you guys. Have a great night. Peace out.